So here we are at Speaker's Corner. Last week, just managed to sneak in to speak after the police had left. The week before, chased around like in a Benny Hill show on a bicycle. The week before, what was it? 80 police or so, or the week before that, 80 police or so came storming in to drive us out. And now, magic upon magic, the government has got rid of the virus, has cured mankind of the problem, and all of a sudden, abracadabra, we're allowed to speak again and gather again and talk again and assemble again. The arbitrary nature of this is not lost on those who are observing the processes happening around us. So I'm going to have a little walkabout at Speaker's Corner today. I don't know if I'm even going to speak today. I think I might just wander around and talk to people. I've done a bit of talking earlier on, done my walking tour and other things. Here we have one of the great rebels of Hyde Park, Eric. So I'm going to have a chit chat with him. Good afternoon.
Hello.
I see here we have one of the great rebels and revolutionaries of Hyde Park. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
So here we are again, having gotten rid of the virus, obviously.
And the police.
And the police have gone as well. So obviously they've done some miracle between last week and this week. My cousin. Are you fearful? You look like you're fearful of the virus. You know you can't catch in the open air like this. You know that, don't you?
Actually, very good friend.
So why do you wear the mask then?
I don't know.
Because everyone else.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, I'm not taking phones.
A good friend of mine died, actually.
Oh, is that right?
A pianist from St. Pancras.
Had something else wrong with them already, though.
Actually, it turned out that he had Mediterranean fever, which is
I mean, there was one doctor in Germany, Professor Klaus Puschel, and he did autopsies on all the bodies in Hamburg who got COVID-19 or were said to have COVID-19, and he found that all of them had 1, 2, or 3 deadly comorbidities. So he basically said these people would have died of anything.
Yeah, I mean, basically, what it is someone comes into hospital, in my opinion, it's because he's probably got a very bad flu or cold or can't breathe. They give him the test, and because he's had the test,
Strikes the fear of God into them.
it's
That as well.
It affects the immune system,
Of course,
the fear,
of course,
and they
quite
may
right.
not actually. They put down.
I mean, imagine you go into hospital, you got some problem.
Yeah.
They test you positive, and then you think, what if I die without my friends, my family, in a plastic box? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the most terrible fear to spread into people.
Fear actually affects your immune system.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Cortisol.
Yeah. Of course it does. How are you? All right?
Hello, man. Everyone's waiting for you. We were hoping to see you earlier on.
I had a walking tour to do, and I had a talk to do about. I wanted to do something on the cholera epidemic.
Did your cousin have a condition?
No, nothing wrong. I mean, she just had it passing. I mean, most people now, they reckon, the World Health Organization reckons 780 million people have had the virus in one form or another. So the death rate is 0.2% according to that.
Jane Rain, in charge of this MHRSA or whatever she
Yeah.
And why haven't the European countries done anything about it?
Oh, you mean the vaccine?
Yeah, why haven't they regulated?
Well, the vaccine can't work. The vaccine can't work because the test doesn't work. The vaccine is based around the test.
Yeah.
You know, when they did the trials on the vaccine, the way to see whether it works or not is to test people. Do they get the virus according to the test?
Yes.
But if the test isn't accurate, and we know it's not accurate, then the vaccine cannot be accurate either. And what happened was there was a petition to the European Medicines Agency and the American Food and Drug Agency.
Yeah.
The day before Britain announced it was allowing the vaccine to be used. And so it was obviously to avoid that regulation. It seems to me that they permitted it. So we're going to try and launch a judicial review, but you know what it's like, the government doesn't like these sort of things. I hear you've got housing problems, is that right?
Yes.
What is it?
I'm under a protective custody.
Why?
Sorry?
Why? Is it something secret or?
No, it's a guy, he wants to kill me.
Why?
What do you think?
He wants to kill me.
Why?
It's a long story.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you, it's no secret.
Okay. Are you all right though?
Yes. But when you said housing problem, the housing problem I've got now is that I've just been burgled.
Burgled, okay.
Yes. And they've posted a whole load of mess.
But have they sent you now with these police things? Did they ever send you a ticket? They didn't send you a ticket, did they?
Sorry?
A ticket for the charges of like breaking Corona? They're not doing it, they're just pretending, you know what I mean? It was always just to scare people, you know what I mean? I haven't received it. 3 times they arrested me, 3 times no ticket.
Yes.
Just bullshit, just to harass people, that's all it is.
What do you think of peers getting £10,000 fine?
Well, it's insane. Completely insane. Completely insane. Madness. Yeah.
What would happen if you'd say, all these £1,000 fines, can't pay, won't pay?
Well, that's what he's going to do. He's not going to pay it. He's not going to pay it. And in fact, the courts have looked at it and they said £10,000 fine. If you go to court, the court can judge, well, can this person pay that? And then if they can't pay it, they don't pay it. So it's nonsense anyway. I better try and make a little
I
talk.
reckon he got the money off his brother.
No, he didn't. He hasn't got the money. He hasn't got the money to pay it. He hasn't got any money. How you doing, all right? How you? Just have a look around. Different approach today. All safe now, is it? All safe now. All safe now, is it?
Right, yeah.
No more danger. COVID over.
Let's hope it's
COVID ended.
You don't believe it anyway?
Huh?
You don't believe it anyway?
I don't believe what?
COVID did.
No, I was the first person. You look at the back of the video, 7th of March, 8th of March. I called for a lockdown then, 3-week lockdown. So, I believe COVID exists. I don't believe it exists now as a significant force in London at all. In the north of England a little bit, but in London, you guys all had it in March and April. That's what I think. All you coppers had it March and April. Just a sniff, maybe nothing. You know, because there's no other explanation why you didn't come down. Why you haven't come down ill? Because you didn't do any distancing. You didn't do any masks. Not until April.
No, lockdown was before then, was it? Initially?
Yeah, but you guys didn't do any lockdown. You guys didn't distance, didn't do anything of that.
It was in the police.
Yeah, you were like Sweden. The police were like Sweden in Britain.
Right.
So you're evidence that actually, looking back on it, probably lockdown wasn't any good either, even then. And it came too late in any case. If it would have done anything, it would have been like New Zealand. Had to be early enough. New Zealand was a few days after us, but because they didn't have many infections, we already had very high infections by that time.
The British Medical Council said that, didn't they?
Oh, everybody said that, really. But I mean, could we really have sealed ourselves off? I don't think so.
How many people in China, though?
Well, in China, the interesting thing about China is...
They welded people into their homes.
Well, yes, but in China, don't forget, everybody lives in in Wuhan, everybody lives in big high-rise blocks. And so it's just like Diamond Princess. Everybody lives in a Diamond Princess, so it's going to spread around. So locking down there did have some logic to it. Although, having said that, between the 10th and the 24th of January was Chinese New Year, and 300 million people moved around China at that time. And yet it didn't spread anywhere else. So I get the suspicion that there's something peculiar to some places. Bergamo, like Southern Italy didn't get it. North did. London got it. Much of Britain didn't really. Nothing like the same numbers. New York got it. Chicago didn't. So there is something about some environments that just happens to be where it spreads, and the other places it doesn't. You know, India. There's in Mumbai, the most densely populated slum in the world. Hardly anybody came down sick. They didn't distance, they didn't wash their hands, nothing. And in Mexico and in Brazil, nobody, the working classes, they're not distancing. But the middle classes, they are. But the working classes, they've not come down large numbers. I mean, in Brazil a bit. But in Mexico, they got no more deaths than we have. You know, so it's just not a simple. It's not a linear thing that everyone gets something and everyone, you know, it affects different people. Different. You guys, mostly of you, are quite healthy, and you don't get it.
Well, I get tested. I've got tested weekly for 5 weeks, and I get tested every month.
But I reckon you guys have already had it right back in March and
The
April.
antibodies as well.
But that's only 60 days that last. It only lasts 60 days, the antibodies. So when were you first tested?
Where am I? It would only been about
April, May or something like that.
not even that. About 4 months ago.
Well, then it's too late to know. I mean, I think
I didn't know that the antibodies.
nearly 60 days max. So I think probably the police, it spread amongst you so rapidly you didn't even know it. And you were like literally all infected by it then. And yet only one police officer died in the whole British police force. 140,000, 451, only one. And he was retired, he had comorbidity, he had heart problems. So you just happened to be fit enough and well enough, but it didn't affect you. We didn't know that. To be fair, we didn't know that. But now we know it, I think all the measures are madness. You know, to be honest, I really think it's just complete madness now.
Affected loads of bus drivers.
Again, I mean, I've worked on the buses. Buses can have a very sedentary life. You're sitting driving all day long. A lot of them get heart problems and stuff like that, literally, and some of them are wound up with the traffic all the time. So some drivers, they can just look at the sky and they drive along and they're fine. Others, because of the way in which they're living, you can do that job even if you're quite ill. You just sit there, drive, but you might have heart problems, lung problems, all the rest of it, and not know it. But it's also true that on the buses, you had enclosed environment, there was no advice about air movement, you know, and they didn't open the windows. They should have opened the windows from the beginning, that's what I said as well. But they didn't open the windows, and then, of course, someone gets on and they're coughing like mad and they've got it. You're sitting on the bus, you're going to breathe it in. Of course, some of them died from that, you know.
How you doing?
Not bad, yeah. Not bad.
How was the nick?
I'm talking to my good friend here.
How was the
We're
nick?
friends this week.
Did you get
Oh, I got framed.
properly taken away?
I got framed. I mean,
I heard you got.
I got framed for having a prescription pill, and they said it was amphetamine. Their tests don't work, you see. I've got sleep apnea pills, and at the police station they said, because they charged me with COVID something, I don't know what COVID what. They took me to the police station, and at the police station they said you can't hold him, and then they searched me and found my prescription pill, and then they said it's amphetamine. It's not amphetamine, so I've got to go to court and prove to them it's not amphetamine. Ridiculous.
They have to prove it is amphetamine.
Well, they claim they did a test and they claim it is. The problem is it has a similar chemical composition, but it's not amphetamine. But their test obviously doesn't distinguish between one and the other, which is the problem with the PCR test. It doesn't distinguish between one type of virus and another, and therefore you can make a mistake of saying someone's got COVID-19 or got SARS-CoV-2 when they haven't. And many people, you know, the lower the prevalence rate, the more false positives are going to get. So that's partly why we're in such a big trouble now, because there are a lot of false positives being found. The problem is with the vaccine, is that the vaccine is based upon the test, and the test isn't accurate. And so if the test isn't accurate and the vaccine is based upon it, the vaccine is also inaccurate. That's why I'm opposed to this vaccine, not to vaccines. I'm opposed to this vaccine because it's just been rushed through for no reason whatsoever.
The Pfizer ones.
Yeah, the Pfizer one, the Pfizer mRNA one. It's just playing with people's lives, and there's no reason for it. You know.
There seems to be a lot of political timing in a lot of it.
Well, too right. There was a submission. If you look at StopPfizer.org, you've got the submission from Mike Yeadon. He was the former scientific officer at Pfizer, and Wolfgang Bodak. He's a German lung expert, epidemiologist expert. He exposed the swine flu pandemic scam in the German Parliament, an investigation into it, and and they submitted a detailed explanation as to why the Pfizer trial should be stopped pending an investigation to the test, because if the test is wrong, then the drug's going to be wrong. And they submitted it on the first. On the second, the British authorities permitted the use of the vaccine. So if you can avoid taking it, I would. You know, I mean, I've taken every vaccine under the sun.
Yeah.
You know, cholera, smallpox, typhoid, BCG. I've had malaria tablets, hepatitis. I don't have a problem with taking vaccines, but why a rush one?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyway, it's good we're back again. See you later, mate, yeah?
I mentioned I work in the same office as Steve. He's not around.
Yeah, so you can get in.
No, I did speak to him. I spoke to him. I mean, look, you guys are part of police. You deal with a different world. The people we had down here, this was all Priti Patel or Sadiq Khan giving orders out that were just basically crazy. I mean, I heard about what's going on. Yeah, I've heard about what's going on. All sorts of fat was going on in the police force for control. You know, how's that any use to anybody? You know.
So we're the people that build up relationships with others that build from the accounts.
Well, it's created years of antagonism now. You know, what for? For what? Because of us lot. But because of him. All right, he's a super spreader, but he's not in a room, is he? Yeah. How are you?
Karl Marx revealed God to you,
No, he didn't know.
Karl Marx wants you to worship the state. That's what this whole world
Well, I don't know about that.
communist,
God.
atheist, world rule. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening in this world.
Unfortunately, what's going on is some of these people, what you're saying there has some truth to it. And that is there's a faction amongst the elite who want to use this pandemic as a mechanism to squeeze the state finances into the big tech sector, who are going to like be the saviors of the world in future pandemics, in the green world and all this. And so they want all the money from you and I to go towards their subsidise their green revolution that's going to save the world from pandemics and save the world from global warming. Big money from our pockets to them. Meanwhile, we're all Uberised and stuffed over, basically. That's what it seems to me. All of us are being trodden on. All the people now, all the shops, all the businesses, all the entertainment industry, all the office staff who used to work in. All the office staff who used to work in in offices. Now they're at home. They've got to pay for their own equipment. They've got to pay for their electricity, their own computer. And they can be replaced at a moment's notice. So we've had a huge shift in the balance of power between the working class, and they've just completely transformed the balance of power. And that is very dated. We've not even seen the beginnings of what that is yet, because they're still furloughing all the rest of it. 3-4 months time, when they say, the vaccine's in, that's when they're going to start hammering everybody. After Christmas, our post-Christmas present. Did you see the Christmas album thing?
Yes.
Oh, it's fantastic. I think I was walking on the street today, someone's playing it. I mean,
yesterday that must have
it went like bananas. I was gonna do something outside the Pfizer headquarters. You know that song, Lily the Pink. Yeah, Lily the Pink's the one. But I was thinking about doing that, and then this came out fantastically produced. How can you not love it? Even no matter what you think, how can you not love that? You know what I mean?
Here comes sanitizer.
Yeah, sanitizer's coming to town. All right, see you later, mate. Yeah. How are you? All right?
No, you're still chasing you the police.
A little bit. Not
chase you all the way down.
Not anymore. How are you? All right?
Hello.
I'm just walking around, talking around. How you doing, man?
Good to
How you
see
doing?
you.
All right?
I told people you always turn up.
How you doing? I was doing a walking tour and I had something else to do.
That's okay.
So
Is it okay? What I'm doing, I'm getting everyone to the same.
we're all videoing each other.
Yeah, what Speaker's Corner means to them. So is it okay if I say,
You can do that, yeah.
what does Speaker's Corner mean to you?
Speaker's Corner's a community of life. It's a community of thought, of difference, of life, of energy. And we literally, I came here first with my dad on his shoulders. I remember standing over there. I was like a tiny kid, maybe 3-4 years of age. There was a communist speaker in the park. I didn't know anything about communism. And someone said to him, I remember this, he said to him, "Why are you wearing a red scarf?" He had quite a big audience, that's all I remember. I was tiny, literally. And I've been coming in since 1986, and I've known people, some of the people who I've known since that time, And some of them, we went to the funerals of some people who were regulars here. It's a living community of the expression of the mind and thought of the British and the world population. So it's an exceptional place. They can't kill it by stamping on us. You know what I mean? Or by arresting us. Thanks.
Cheers, Heiko.
You're welcome.
You'll have to see my speech on that. I'll put up your interview soon.
do it.
I've got a bloody backlog because
I
you
know,
only meant to.
I've got that.
Yeah, I've got a backlog, but I'm trying to prioritise the time-sensitive stuff. So yours is still sitting there, waiting to be uploaded. I'm going to try and get this up. I've got one to upload at 1 o'clock.
You're doing a good job. Unfortunately, what's happening is there's a lot of censorship going on, and people are starting to self-censor to get past that, which of course is very bad.
Exactly.
What we actually need to do is bypass them and go to other channels. Even if for now it's less people, better to bypass. Do what you can, but bypass them.
Well, have you got a Patreon account?
I'm about to do all that sort of stuff. Again, I've got backlogs and everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah, but we do have to go into and it's bad for us to try and get round them.
See, you're more proletariat, I'm more bourgeoisie, getting an assistant in, I pay her in chocolate coins.
Good.
I mean, is that exploitation? I'm not sure.
Yes, it is. It's terrible exploitation. See you later, yeah? How you guys doing, all right? You doing all right? How you doing? How you doing? Yeah, go on. Hi, yeah, how you doing?
Handshaker. So we were just talking about ethnicity. It's not probably something you're always concerned with up on the pedestal, but are you half Chinese?
I am, yeah.
Like fully.
My dad's Chinese, Malaysian Chinese, yeah.
Okay, is he? Both his parents are Chinese.
Yeah.
Wow, you don't look it.
My mother, half Chinese, half German. Born in Britain.
That's what I said.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're trying to get the answer because I don't think there needs to be. We're trying to have a discussion about racism.
You're a really
and you thought you were
interesting
going to
example of how really culturally and ethnically diverse we are.
Yeah, and
But you're
for me,
white as far as most
it's
people are
important for
concerned.
me as an identity because that helped me look at Britain a bit more objectively. Like when we were at school, in junior schools, I was in school in the 60s at junior school. So when we were at school, at the infant school, the girls used to grab hands and they go, "We want girls, we want girls," and they'd fall into great big and then they'd play whatever, dolls or whatever. And the guys would go, arm in arm, "We want men, we want men." And then we'd form into two groups, England and Germany, and fight war. Honest, that's what happened.
Who won?
And that was from the infant school until mid-junior level. So
You went on the
till we're about
German
10.
side.
It depended, but I tended to do that. I did, yeah.
Are you trying to make?
I was a guerrilla soldier.
He's trying to say that you saw that thing differently from everyone else.
I did see it differently.
Aren't you also saying that?
And when I was a kid, war films were on all the time. It was still the generation where the black and white Second World War film was a big deal. Yeah. Oh, and I don't watch telly now, so I don't know.
You went to school in London.
Yeah, South
There
London.
must have been more than just English people in the class.
We had
Right.
we had one person in my secondary school in my year who was Indian. But otherwise, it was totally white in those
Where is
days.
this?
Morden, Rose Hill.
That's not really London.
Not really London.
Joking. Okay,
It's the EastEnders who were moved out there after the Second World War. Actually,
Is that a fact? Okay,
yeah,
I didn't know that. Last question. Now, the reason we brought this up is because of. That's too deep. But anyway, the question is way too deep. The question is has anyone ever looked at you or just come up to you straight away and assumed you were anything other than white?
So of course, I remember walking around Berlin in 1990. A good friend of mine, Amin Jamani, came along to Berlin to visit me. This was just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, but the mood had turned quite reactionary, and I didn't know what it was like because I'd been in the revolution. I thought people were very progressive and all that. I walked with him down the middle of Berlin in Alexanderplatz, and people were shouting out, Heil Hitler, get back to where you're from." You know what I mean?
Wow.
And that was really, that moment was really dangerous.
I've never even seen anything.
And funny thing was, I stood up on the square there and spoke in the beginning of January. I couldn't stop it. And then a football match had ended, BFC Hertha, German football match, Berlin football match. And they were quite right-wing, so they came out the train station and they saw me and my mate standing there speaking, Trotskyist ranting, and they started pushing my mates, not that we had banners and that, pushing them over, and then the leader came up and he goes, hang on. He's from England. And in England, they got the National Front. He's all right.
Yeah.
And then they left me alone. So, fucking hell. The National Front saved me. Yeah, mental, yeah.
I remember being in Bratislava in 1995, and when Vladimir Shah was the Prime Minister there, and seeing people walking around all in black, with the old fascist.
It was the anti-communist mood at the time, wasn't it? That's what it was.
Vladimir Shah, he was a communist mayor of Bratislava, and then after 1989, he turned into became
plenty of that around. Plenty of that around. And Russia's full of all of that, isn't
exactly.
it? Never wonder. All right, see you guys later.
Oh, take care, mate.
And who's Jesus said the Father? Wait. Who's the Father?
How you doing, man? All right, yeah, good. How you doing, guys? How you doing, all right?
Donald Trump in a nutshell. Your hero.
Every shall bow, every tongue confess
How you doing, brother?
that Jesus Christ.
I still didn't put your video up. I'm really sorry. I put it up. I didn't put it up on time. I should have put it up that day, you know. But it'll be online tomorrow.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, you too.
He's Lord. Jesus Christ is Lord. He has risen from the dead. You need your life. Repent from your sin.
He's trying to say they had two antichrists. One of them is
So to those who condemn people who are supposedly anti-vax or conspiracy theorists, I just ask them to come down to Speaker's Corner, you know. How you doing, man? All right? How you doing, all right?
All right, good to see you, man.
I'd ask them to demonstrate.
You got arrested.
I've got a few times. I'll be back in a minute. How you doing, man? All right? How you doing?
You take the vaccine.
Oh, yeah, of course, yesterday.
Would you?
So, you know, what is conspiracy theory? You know, there's plenty of people. How you doing, all right?
I saw your videos.
Yeah.
So I was keeping up with what's going on. It was quite funny. You riding around on the bike.
Yeah, well, obviously some people didn't find it funny because they persecuted me the week after for that, you know. At Tel Aviv. I'm just having a quick talk to this and I'll be back in a little while. So, you know, what's the conspiracy? How you doing, man? All right? Good.
Nice to see you.
How you doing, all right?
Were you being harassed just then? Or?
No.
We were just having a conversation.
They're being very pleasant. There's a Hyde Park.
Well, you never know. Do you?
Nah, they don't agree with it.
Huh?
They don't agree with what happened. They were overridden by the biggies, you know what I mean? How you doing, Mark? So, you know, good. So you know, how do people formulate ideas if they don't go through the idea of conspiracies of some form or another, you know? So when three people get together and plan something, of course people think those things. A landlord wants to evict you, you know. Is it conspiracy? Well, it is a conspiracy because they're making an alliance with the courts, the system and so on to harass people. You know, does that make a unified single conspiracy? No. Karl Marx, for example, said there are conspiracies. What's a conspiracy? Well, capitalism is a type of conspiracy, but it has an automatism to it, and therefore the individual conspiracies are subordinate to the systemic structure which produces the behaviour of human beings within society based on the way in which production is organised. How are you, my friend? All right?
What a difference a week makes.
What's that?
What a difference.
Well, exactly. Isn't it mad? Isn't it? You know what I mean? Last week, what was it? Thursday, you can still get grabbed by everybody and beaten up, and now you gather here. What a saviour Boris Johnson is.
What a saviour the likes of you and Piers Corbyn.
They back down. They're nothing now. That's right. They back down.
Wow, there's so much coming on stream now. There's the German lawyer taking the German government to court and challenging the PCR test to the fraud that it is.
Right. And of course, the vaccine is based on the PCR test.
And how can you derive a vaccine from a test not testing for the virus?
Madness. Absolutely mad.
Obviously,
The fight will continue, my friend. So, I don't think I even need to speak today. I don't know. Let's see. I mean, I wanted to give a sense of what the mood is like, what the ideas are, what we're fighting for. This is what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right of people to disagree. And I remember in 1989, and this is a message to those on the left who've been condemning us for demonstrating, to defend the right to speak and the right to organise and the right to discuss, and who are suddenly silent about the same issues when people protest in France. Suddenly they're, oh yeah, the French are okay. So you can't have it both ways, you see. You can't say you're defending the right of people if you're not defending the right of people who don't agree with you. So what does it mean? It means here the Jewish, the Christian, the Muslim, the fundamentalist of the Christian variety, various types of, simple ideas about Christianity, about politics, about philosophy. If we're not able to agree, to disagree, to allow people to express themselves, to gather, to discuss, to debate, to find out what is true. Listen, I'm really sorry I didn't say something to you about when you got beaten up. I saw that as terrible, that video. That was terrible. It's terrible. Did you manage to get any progress on the...
Yeah, I mean, they got witnesses, they got CCTV, it should go on. So.
Okay, good. Keep me informed about it, yeah? So, here we are again, and this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right to people. How are you, my friend?
Why don't you have a lot of people?
I don't have anybody. Nobody knows me. So we're fighting for the right of people to express themselves and to collaborate, express ideas, have different ideas, develop their ideas. How else does anything develop? People talk about science. Well, how do you think science develops unless you've got contrarian ideas? At the moment, there's an attempt by layers of the ruling classes, particularly in the United States of America, who funded huge investments in certain types of research to forbid other types of research from being published. For example, I published a video by Sukhari Bhakti where I interviewed him. That was banned. I posted a video by Mike Yeadon. That got a fact-checking statement by a complete lunatic. It's the German press agency who knew nothing about the subject matter. And this is the world we've entered, a world of censorship, which it is true that this emulates the censorship of the Stalinist world in the past, that you're not allowed to express yourself. It emulates the censorship in China, that they have defined what's supposed to be the truth, and we're supposed to go along with it. Well, we've got a battle on our hands to formulate new methods of communication that bypass this insane censorship system that they're trying to impose on us, alongside all the insane measures that they've been imposing on us. So that'll do for me for now, I think. Unless I get up and speak, I'll see. Maybe I should get up and speak a little bit, maybe just a few minutes. How are you, all right?
Nice coat.
Thank you.
Nice coat. Very stormtrooper, but it looks good.
Chinese,
yeah.
But everybody loves it.
It does look good. It suits you. Yeah.
It's very warm.
I watch a lot of your videos, and I'm very interested in maybe having a podcast discussion.
Let's do it. Yes.
Maybe about different subjects, because not just history and science, but how
money
they
is
relate,
flying around the floor.
Oh, pick it up.
Look at that. The streets of London are paved with gold.
Paved with silver.
Or did it fall out of my pocket? Do you want to film? I'll do a short talk. I don't want to talk for long, but I'll stand on that platform.
Yeah, mate.
Is the light right that way?
Yep.
Is that yours?
You want to borrow your... Go on, mate.
I'll move over there for a bit. I'll bring it back to you.
He's going to move over there.
I'll bring it back to you. My voice won't carry very far today. Yeah, the light's got to be coming that way, isn't it? Yeah. No, I think you have to do it from this side.
Yeah.
Boiler suit I got. I got the boiler suit because I had two pairs of trousers. Both of them were ruined by the police.
Oh,
broken by the police.
Like a what?
They tore my trousers off me. So I've got two ripped trousers. So I had to go down the road at Portobello and just buy the first thing I could buy. And I thought, okay, something it might be all right.
It's cool on Saturday.
So I'm just going to speak very quickly. I'm not going to speak for very long. I've done a walking tour this morning. I've done various things. I'm a little bit drawn out. Just a quick summary of what's been happening. Well, one of the most interesting things that happened was that, and if you look on the website stoppfizer.org, I posted a petition submitted to the European Medicines Agency and to the American Food and Drug Administration, which explains that the test on which the entire pandemic identification has been based was never peer-reviewed. It was never studied and investigated properly. It was brought out in a panic. And it was adopted by the World Health Organization as the standard for determining if someone is infected by the virus. But being infected by the virus, according to the PCR test, does not mean that you have a virus. It could be a part of a broken virus. It could be another virus, another coronavirus. It could be an active virus which infects you severely, or it could be a virus that barely makes you ill. And we know for a fact that 90% of all so-called SARS-CoV-2 infections are asymptomatic and therefore mean nothing. And yet, on the basis of this same test, Pfizer developed a vaccine to stop you getting that SARS-CoV-2 virus or part of a virus that the PCR test is supposed to detect. But if the PCR test doesn't work, how can the vaccine based upon it work? The danger is furthermore that vaccine, because of the way it interacts with the cell and produces the appearance of spikes on the outside of the cell that they implant this RNA message into, it can produce, we don't know yet, but it may well produce infertility in women. That, of course, is why the government, even they've admitted they're not going to give it to pregnant women. Well, they know why. Because it may produce infertility, but it may also produce the appearance of a virus and a reaction by the T cells. That's the memory, the long-term memory of previous infections with other coronaviruses, which may result in a cytokine storm. Cytokine storm means that the memory cells called killer peptides will attack the healthy cells and injure or even kill the person who has got this appearance of having been infected with the virus. So why did Pfizer get permission from the British government, or better said, its regulatory agency, to use the vaccine in emergency on the 2nd of December? Wasn't it out of the blue? All of a sudden, out of all the countries in the world, the British permitted the vaccine. Why? Because the day before, or I believe this is the case, the day before, Dr. Mike Eden, former scientific advisor at Pfizer himself,
one of the most highly respected experts in the field. He submitted a petition to the European Medicines Agency and the Food and Drug Administration of the United States of America, and a peer-reviewed paper showing that the original PCR test that's used to detect the virus, supposedly,
not fit for purpose,
is not fit for purpose, does not detect the virus, does not distinguish a real virus from an inactive virus, does not detect parts of a virus from a real virus, does not tell you if the person is going to come down ill.
Right.
And on the basis of that test, Christian Drosten, Professor Drosten of the Charité University, he wrote his paper about the PCR test on the 21st of January this year. It was published in a journal, in a scientific medical journal, 2 days later. How could there have been a scientific peer review
before it broke out
of a paper that was published 2 days after it was written? And by the way, on the editorial board of the journal in which it was published sits Christian Drosten, who wrote the paper. So it was never peer-reviewed. It was never authorized as a test to detect the virus. And it does not, in its present form, detect an active virus. Because each cycle, which it goes through in the test, called the CT cycle, each cycle amplifies the presence of the parts of the virus by 2 times. So if you start with 10 parts and you multiply it 10 times, you get 1,000. But if you multiply it 17 times, you get 100,000. So therefore, it's like with an alcohol test. If you drive along the road and you've had this much whiskey and you get stopped by a traffic control and they do your breath test, they will not detect you as over the limit. But with the CT test, with the PCR test that they use at the moment, with completely different levels of CT processing, it could be 25 is probably what they should use. It could be 35, it could be 45 times. That they amplify the amount of genetic material that they look at. And the genetic material they look at does not detect SARS viruses. It detects one of 6 bat viruses that enter the human body. That's according to Christian Drosten's paper itself. There is a way to distinguish between a SARS virus and between 6 bat viruses. They distinguished Yeadon and others in a peer-reviewed study of the PCR test made by Christian Drosten have identified a string of the virus which is unique, and that would be able to detect SARS-CoV-2 infection if the right amount of CT processing is done. And they've shown that that's how you can identify it. So you could make a vaccine even on that basis. But these people want to carry on with the con that they pulled on the world. Yes. A con they have pulled on the world. And by the way, they say there are 1 million deaths from COVID-19, 1 million something. We know these figures are wrong. But ask yourself this. According to John Ioannidis, the world's leading epidemiologist at Stanford University, according to him, the increase in tuberculosis deaths by 2025 will be 1.4 million. The increase in AIDS deaths, 1 million. The increase in malaria deaths, 400,000 or 495,000. So more people from those 3 diseases will die than have died in the present pandemic. And by the way, I agree with Yeadon that it is most likely that the pandemic ended in this summer. These are small ebbs of the process passing out around the country. In London, right throughout this so-called second wave. Maximum deaths per day, 10.
4,000 people a year in our
in
country
London
die of liver disease.
We already had the virus spread through the London population in February, March and April. And I said to the police officers, and I repeat this now, the police officers are like a mini Sweden in our midst. They did not practice distancing. They did not wear masks until April. Nothing they did protected them against the virus. Therefore, most of them caught it. But they didn't notice. Just like most of you will not notice if you catch it. You may not even get a sniff. So most of the police have had it. And yet, only one police officer out of 140,451 total UK police force. In fact, that's not the total, but
Can I ask you 3 questions?
Only one police officer died, and he was retired, and he had heart problems, which is what actually killed him. You first, then you.
And everyone needs to know this. Have you noticed on your TV, in every country in the world, whether it's democratic or authoritarian, the police are tooling up with guns, tear gas, lasers. We are moving into a global fascist world where you won't be allowed to speak freely, you won't be allowed to live freely, and the police will shoot on sight, American style. You see what's going on in Hong Kong?
You won't be allowed even to congregate. I do not live here, but the bicycles were restricted to certain areas. Now they can go everywhere, so they don't want you to congregate. Now the question, sir.
Yes.
How many diseases do birds transmit?
Did you see the news
60!
today? One sec, wait.
No, I'll be very brief. 60 diseases are transmitted by birds. This is a variation of the bird flu. Yes, it is. And more, I'll conclude this. I'll be very short. I'll be very brief. The last plague in Venice was not by rats. That mask is not a carnival mask.
We don't get bird flu.
The gentleman's got it. So if you look at the BBC website this morning, it's farcical. There is an article on the BBC website.
So what about all the elderly?
One sec. I'll come back to you in 1 sec. The BBC website today says all birds in Britain held in farms must now stay at home. There's a lockdown on all birds in farms in Britain now. From this week. A lockdown. Yes, a lockdown. All like factory birds, chickens and all the rest of it. And it's because there's an outbreak of bird flu. So they want to move on. You see, they've done the testing on COVID. Now they want to move on to testing the birds. They told us it came from a bat in Wuhan. Someone in China ate a bat. But now it turns out all the mink in Holland, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Spain, they all got SARS-CoV-2. So they murdered tens of millions of mink, killed them all, chucked them in graveyards. But it turned out some of them didn't die, and they escaped, and they're running around in the wild now, ready to cough on you and give you bat flu. The world medical and scientific profession and the media and the governments have been corrupted by financial interests associated with big capital, who have gained an enormous advantage during the crisis and are using that economic advantage, the money they made from speculation, to buy up the economy and reorganize the world in their image, which they're talking about complete rubbish. You know, save the world from the climate. So as soon as this crisis is over, they're going to start talking about, oh my God, the world's going to be destroyed by the climate. And there's going to be a new bird flu and a new pandemic. And everywhere they're going to go looking for a new agent with 5 people who get ill with it. Every time in the past, we never had the tests. Now they're going to find new tests. Someone comes down ill, oh, a new virus. Watch out, lockdown, imprison people. You're right. By the way, a message to the police. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, you came here, 80 of you, and stormed in here driving us out of the park. But all the things the police officers do, there's a small problem. I quote you from Bertolt Brecht. General, your army is powerful. It has powerful tanks and aeroplanes, but it has one flaw. The aeroplane needs a pilot. The tank needs a driver. The police, you don't think they're also dispensable? They will replace them with drones. They will replace them with robo-dogs. That's what will police the demonstrations in future.
They told you.
Robo-dogs with nets and with drones. That's where they want to go. Because it will save a lot of money. Who needs PC Plod, who's nevertheless, despite occasionally being brutal, they are nevertheless human beings with families and friends on the other side. As my video earlier on will show, the police are not monolithic, and therefore they will also have to be robotized. Is this really the world we want to go to? Now we have to ask ourselves, on the cusp of revolutions in technology, who controls the technology? Who controls the resources? Who controls the NHS? Who controls the pharma industry? We must take back control of the economic resources and the direction of the technology made by our hands and our brains. And the internet, by the way, which is increasingly censored by agents of the American Democratic
Wasting
Party.
your time on your laptop and your computer.
We must fight them by real human interaction. That's why breaking down the bullshit, not Zoom, not YouTube, not Facebook, but real human interaction smashes the power that they have over us. That is our pathway to liberation. That is why they couldn't stop us last week. They come in. Now look, we're back already. They will not stop us. We will defeat them. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Want to say exactly what Ike says in his new book. What do you want to say?
I just wanted to say Pfizer. If you look at what Pfizer has been involved in, they were investigated for fraud. They were prosecuted for fraud. Not only they were prosecuted for fraud, Pfizer in Nigeria was giving Nigerian children untested drugs. Untested drugs. So they were prosecuted for fraud, and this company is extremely dangerous. We should not put our lives at hand against this country. Second thing, what I wanted to say was against Bill Gates. I've looked at Bill Gates and his background. Bill Gates and his father, they've been involved in this thing, but they think that there's too many people in the world. Population control.
Eugenics movement.
Population control. So Bill Gates has been involved in wanting to lessen the population of the world for a very, very long time. I believe that he's a front man. He's a front man for the elite of the world. The reason he's got 150 billion pounds or whatever amount of money he's got, he's a front man for these people so that he can bring about their agenda. Because if it was the US government or the British government saying that we need this vaccine, people would be naturally suspicious. But if a philanthropist, somebody with a good reputation, comes and says that trust me on this vaccine, trust me on that vaccine, because he's a philanthropist, people would trust him. But this man is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't trust him. Don't trust the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine.
Well said. Well said. Thank you.
I bought 2 t-shirts.
Thank you.
I've been sending them onto the forum. I don't know if you're part of Peers Forum.